personalized.
My houses come up in the first page.
Recording that testimonial.
Really, the more you have to be organized.
Not to put all your eggs into one basket.
Keep those people remembering you. Give them what they're looking for.
But properly priced is the key.
I say, how can I do this different?
You know, we don't have a technology problem. We have a people problem. You have to build a relationship.
Secrets of Top-Selling Agents with your hosts, Deborah Halloran and Mel McMurrin.
Welcome. My name's Deb Halloran, and I'm producer and host of Secrets of Top-Selling Agents. And I'm here with my sound engineer and co-host, Mel McMurrin. Good morning, Mel.
Good morning, Deb.
You're a little flustered there.
Lots to do today.
There is.
It's all recorded, so everybody relax, take some notes, but no, you can come back and watch again.
I'm very happy to introduce Jim Remley and James Colburn today. We have been fortunate to have Jim on our Secret show many times in the past, and he's one of my favorite speakers who shot to real estate stardom in the first 2 years of his career at age 19 and 20 by listing 150 properties in a 12-month period. He was then listed in the top 1% of realtors nationwide. Today, Jim is the principal broker sales manager at John L. Scott, Medford, and Ashland. He is the author of 3 books, Make Millions Selling Real Estate Presentations That Make Millions, and Sell Your Home in Any Market. Jim and James are working on a new book called Teamify, which is the name of this webinar. Jim is a luxury home specialist as well as a sought-out coach and trainer.
And we're excited to welcome co-author and Seattle-based top-producing realtor since 1990s, James Colburn. James is a real estate coach and consultant to 1,600-plus real estate agent brokers and 80 real estate offices on the West Coast. He's also the author of an Amazon 5-star success book, Re-Succeed. James works with entrepreneurs and top executives on next-level thinking, new startup venture strategy, fulfillment, and purpose. And James, like Deb said, he's the co-author of that upcoming book. Today's topic, Teamify, the smart agent's no-headache, step-by-step guide to creating a winning real estate team, crushing your competition, and getting your life back.
Welcome, Jim and James. Are you there?
We are.
We are. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much for giving up your time today to share all of this with so many budding people who want to create a team. And my voice just went. Did you see the results of that poll, Jim?
Yes, I did. Very interesting. We got a lot of people out there thinking about getting their team on, getting it starting their team.
Right.
So it's exciting.
Right. Well, welcome, both of you. And do you have control there, or do you need any help?
I think I've got control.
Okay. There you go. Yep, you got it.
So, one of the biggest questions I get at least weekly in my company, and I'm sure James can attest to this in the company that he coaches, is should I form a team? Big question. People walk in and say, hey, I'm seeing everybody in my market. They're forming teams. It seems like it's the new hot rage. It's the trend in the market. And it's a tempting thing because you see people doing 20, 30, 40, $50 million in business, and you want to compete. You want to be at a high level. But is that the best reason to do something? The 4 reasons I get most often when I say, well, why do you want to form a team? First one is everyone else was doing it. The second one is I'm too busy and I need help, which is probably more of a valid reason because really the essence of having a team is leads. And in order to have a team, you have to have a steady stream, a constant stream of leads to feed the machine, to feed the team, right? So if you're too busy, that probably could be a reason to form a team. Although I always encourage agents, listen, way before a team, you probably should be thinking about, hey, let's see how many leads I'm really generating I could hand off. Find a junior agent in the office and hand them 4, 5, 10 leads a month and see if you can do that consistently for 3 or 4 months just to see if you have the ability to have enough business to really justify a team. The other thing is I hear people, I want my life back, I want life balance. That's a very valid reason. There's a burnout factor in real estate that people just get tired. They get really tired of all the calls at night. They get tired of not being able to go on vacation. They get tired of a lot of things. And so the attraction of a team is, hey, I'm going to be able to share some of that responsibility. The downside is, as a team leader, you actually are serving this big machine. And so you actually become, a big business owner to some degree. I mean, most businesses that are doing 50, 30, 40, $50 million in volume would be considered a pretty big business. And so you forget that. So you got to be careful that you don't walk away from one responsibility into another one without knowing what you're doing there. And the last thing is I just want to make more money. I want to do better. And that's another valid reason. But you've got to start from the fact of, do I have enough leads to generate the team? So that's kind of the starting process, the genesis. I always say building a team is not the solution, it's an evolution, and it's going to be time, it's going to be effort, it's going to be work, and it takes some time to get there. The biggest thing that comes to mind when I'm coaching people, and I'm having
Oh, Mel, you might have to click in there, Jim, because I think Mel was.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and this is really James, and what he's bringing to the table is some different conceptions and misconceptions. So James, can you speak to this a little bit?
Well, the lead misconceptions oftentimes is we oftentimes figure out a way not to become a team first before we consider what it would take to become a team. So one of the lead misconceptions is that we give up business, which Jim's already touched on. There's a little bit, there's costs involved in starting a team, but ultimately there's win if it's right for you. So, considering that, obviously, that we oftentimes worry that our clients won't work with anyone else but us, which there's a tendency in real estate to feel like our clients would only work with us, and sometimes that is the case. But interestingly enough, when it comes to starting a team, the last hire you would make would be your own replacement. So, oftentimes the thought is that building a team means you have to give up your clients, and ultimately that would be one of the last things you would do. And then finally, that you'd be a horrible boss. Obviously, the real estate industry attracts a lot of people that don't want to work with others except for their clients. They're amazing with their clients and maybe not so great, especially really, really highly successful individuals in interacting with folks at the office. So there's a concern there, and maybe even a challenge in imagining becoming a better leader. So those are lead misconceptions, because all can be resolved with the right group of people that you bring on if Teams is right for you. The liability of newness was developed by a sociology professor. His name is Arthur Stinchcombe. And interestingly enough, Arthur Stinchcombe studied behavior and realized that new teams, not just real estate teams, but new teams in general within companies, deal with this thing called the liability of newness, which is the idea that new teams depend on the cooperation of others, which certainly would be the case with real estate agents that develop a team. When you bring on a new group of people, you don't exactly know how they're going to cooperate. I'm sure Jim can speak to this with teams that he works with. He's actually had a large deal of success in seeing this work. Jim, what's your view on that?
So I think the issue of a new team forming is you have to go in with both eyes open, everybody understanding the roles. And we're going to speak to the roles that each person would have, but you have to definitely walk in and say there has to be real cooperation here, open and authentic communication. Biggest thing I see that's a problem for teams is there's not, especially at a leadership level, for somebody that's new to leading a team, is I've got to be able to be real and authentic with all my team people, and when they're wrong, I got to say they're wrong. When they make a mistake, I got to immediately say that you made a mistake. And the reverse has to be true as well, in that the team is empowered to say the same thing back to the team leader. There can't be any hesitation. There has to be total honest communication, as in, you wrote that offer wrong. You didn't handle that buyer correctly. And it's not that you're trying to beat them up. You're trying to get better. And through critique and through critique and communication is our most powerful tool in building a team and building it correctly. So kind of starting with a clean slate, maybe having a meeting and saying, guys, we have to have this open, authentic communication level. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. If you're wrong, I'm going to tell you. When you do great, I'm going to tell you. We're going to catch each other doing right, but let's be open and honest with each other.
Yeah, that's great. And really, that's the vulnerability of opening yourself up to a team. The second item on the liability of newness is the thought that initially new teams have a low level of legitimacy. However, normally teams in the real estate industry are developed by already highly achieved, highly successful agents. So the legitimacy is already there. It starts with typically the team lead, so that is not as much of a concern in real estate teams, as well as the challenge to compete with established teams. So we have agents that become teams, highly successful agents becoming teams. They're already established in the industry, but now they just have more people working with them. So when it comes to the liability and newness, obviously the most important thing is the cooperation of others within the team and kind of working that out.
I would say, when people come to me and they say, okay, we're going to form a team, or we're thinking about forming a team, I would say, okay, I'm going to use the bakery example on you. And I say, what's that mean? So imagine your favorite bakery you go to. They're the best donuts. In fact, today's, by the way, for everyone that's listening, today is Administrative Assistant Day. So for those of you that had admin assistants, make sure you buy in some donuts, some coffee, or some balloons. I did all three this morning with my team. But going back to the bakery example, if you walk into a bakery and you say, this is the greatest bakery ever, and the person that's leading the bakery says, I want to sell more donuts, and I noticed that my competitor down the street has 3 employees, I only have 1. Do you think my solution is just to hire more employees? And the answer would be absolutely not. Your solution is to sell more donuts, then you can hire more employees. And this is where the fallacy is, that for a person on the outside of a team, they think, well, I just need to add team members and then I'll instantly have $20 million in volume or $30 million in volume. Wrong. The first thing you need to do is get control of your lead generation. First and foremost, great leaders are great at selling donuts. They're lead generators. So until you get control of leads, you have no business starting a team. And the one thing I would say is that sometimes we think a team, we think of a big group, like 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 agents in a group. Really, a team can be as little as you and your assistant. So remember, this is an evolution, not a solution. So the first evolution of this is you first getting an assistant. And if you can't hire an assistant, again, no business running a team. So that's and you be able to afford an assistant is probably you, to some degree, having enough leads to pay for that, right? Now, this is what I hear too. Instantly, when I give the bakery example, here the immediate response is, yeah, but real estate's different, Jim. I said, well, how's it different? It's different in the sense that when I bring in a licensed team member, they're themselves going to bring leads to the table. They're themselves going to help me, power up this huge volume machine. The answer is no, they're not. At my company, we have 150 brokers. We're on track to do $1 billion in the next 18 months. I can tell you I have some of the most successful teams in the state of Oregon working for me. That's absolutely not true. Team members are never going to be a significant source of leads. If they were, and if they could lead generate themselves, they probably would never join a team. That's just the hard truth of it. Not that they're not great salespeople. Most of them are fantastic with people. They're really good. But it's just not their forte to be super lead generators, right? And that's okay. There's a role for everyone in life, and for people that join teams, they're usually not huge lead generators. So the fallacy in the idea that, oh, I'm going to hire all these people and they're going to bring me leads, probably not going to happen. So first and foremost, you have to analyze yourself and say, to be a team leader, am I a rainmaker? Am I a haymaker? Am I a leader? And if you're not today, it's okay. If that's your goal, to be there maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, and you grow into that role. So it's a process. But let go of the idea of you can grow a team by adding people. So first step in team building. My first thing I say to everyone is, do you have an assistant now? And if they say yes, is it a full-time assistant? If it's not a full-time assistant, scratch the idea of going out and building a team. That's your first kind of threshold you got to step over, right? Now, eventually, of course, what an assistant does for us is many things when they're assisting us as an individual agent. But eventually, if your goal is to have a team, they can move from assistant, if we have the label on them, to being an administrator. And you can kind of set that bar early on and say with your assistant, with the goal of growing a team, is, hey, listen, here's the growth pattern that I want to follow. You're going to start as an assistant, but I want to work towards you becoming an administrator. And here's what that means. Your number one job as we grow this team will be to build repeatable and scalable systems. And that means things that we're going to be able to do over and over and over again consistently. Great book, which we probably have all read, but just as a reminder, the E-Myth Revisited. by Peter Gerber. And he talks about the power of having systems in place that are repeatable. And without them, you really don't have a business. You know, you're just going through the motions and you're fighting your way through every day, and it's just by sheer force of will you're successful. That's absolutely exhausting. If you build systems, that's what's going to create repeatable success and a saleable company later on. If you want to sell your team, you have to have systems in place. You also have to have an incubation system for leads. Remember, the biggest value point you have to get people to join your team is going to be lead generation. So it's not just getting the leads to the front door, it's how we're going to incubate them. And I will say, if you look at a lot of teams today, especially millennial teams, they are building their team based on online leads. And if they're basing that on online leads, we know the incubation period for some online leads is as long as 6 to 9 months. So if we don't have that incubation system in place, we're missing the boat. And that's part of that admin's job. And then in the beginning, they're going to be doing transactional listing coordination. That might be handed off later. And then communication platforms with clients, being able to make sure that as the team leader grows, that the communication with the client stays constant. That's still the biggest complaint that I find in managing teams, is that I listed my house with a team, but I never heard from the team leader. And you can solve that through a better communication platform. And that comes from having a great admin that forces that down your throat every day and says, you have to call these 5 people. Just touch them, leave a voicemail, you know, send them a quick text, send them a quick email. But that's what that admin's job is, to keep you in front of those people on a regular basis. Super important. Now, the other thing that I hear often, Deborah, is, wait, what about a partner instead? I'm going to go down the partner path. And when you think about partners, I think, first of all, I was a part of a partnership. I've been involved with partnerships before. I'm going to tell you that having a successful partnership is almost like catching lightning. It's very, very rare for a partnership to work. That being said, I'm very fortunate to have Deanna Sickler and Diane Lane that work with my company, who probably are one of the most, if not the most successful partnership in the state of Oregon. They closed $53 million, and they did that without an assistant. Just the two of them working very, 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 very hard. And the problem with a partnership is that when you have 2 people come into a partnership, one of them inevitably is more of the rainmaker, and one of them inevitably is more of the admin person. It's just kind of the roles they fit. And what can happen is that rainmaker can start to feel like, wait a second, I'm giving up way too much of my income to this person that's more of the admin here, and I'm the rainmaker, right? So that's where the partnerships almost inevitably fail, is that compensation model feels unfair and it doesn't feel justified. So what I tell people is that it's not, when we're looking at the idea of a partnership, it's not addition and division, it's multiplication. And what I mean by that is that here's what happens. People walk into my office and they'll say, Jim, I'm doing $8 million in business, and I've got this person I want to add to and create a partnership with, and I say, well, what's their production? Which they never think about, by the way. And they'll say it's $2 million. And so I'll say, okay, so you're going to have a combined $10 million in production. Is that going to be a 50-50 split now? So you're going to now actually go down to $5 million in production. But good news for them, they just went up, 150%. They're now to $5 million. So a partnership never works unless you actually come into the spectrum of, we're going to actually take that $10 million in production, and together we've got to get to $15 or $20 million to make this make sense. Because if we're just adding a production, the rainmakers are losing money, so it doesn't make sense. So that's what I say. If you can have a successful partnership and you want to explore that, first, clear financial goals and a compensation agreement. And the compensation agreement, here's my key thing, doesn't have to be 50-50. If the rainmaker's bringing 60-70% of that business, it could be a different split, right? So don't be afraid of that. The other thing is clearly defined roles and a job description for each person. Super important. Hey, and written down. One page doesn't have to be complicated, but here's what I'm responsible for. Here's what you're responsible for. And the most important thing, and my 10 years at this company, I've probably seen 10 partnerships begin and fail, at least. So is to have an exit strategy. So I always say, I want you to assume this is just like a marriage. An exit strategy is your prenup, And you're going to have a prenup, or I'm not going to allow this to happen, right? So the prenup is just going to say, what happens if this doesn't work, right? Yeah. So we outline who's going to get the listings, how's the compensation going to break down. Without that, I can tell you from a brokerage standpoint, it's an absolute nightmare, because partnerships, when they end, they often end poorly.
And can we go back to that slide, Jim?
Sure.
So the 3 points that you put there relative to successful partnerships, is that why Deanna and Dylan work, or is there something else about their personalities that work as well?
Well, they have a lot of advantages to their partnership, which I think is rare. One of them is they're best friends. So
great.
Here's one, and I'm glad you brought us back to this slide. So here's one concept that I always encourage people to consider when they're doing a partnership, and that is this. I always ask them, have you ever done a road trip with this person? And the inevitable answer is, no.
No.
And I'll say, well, guess what? You're going to get married to this person and be working with them 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Here's what I want you to do. Go on a road trip with them for a weekend. Go somewhere. You guys go to San Francisco, go wherever you want to go, but take a road trip. And then at the end of that road trip, when you come back, you tell me if you still want to be a partner with them.
Oh, that is great, Jim.
If you can't be in a car with them for 6, 7, 8 hours, you can't work with them for 40 hours a week, I guarantee it, right? So partnership, being different than a team is, and 90% of the time, a successful team is more of a pyramid. You have a team leader at the top who basically has, a lot of them will be licensed agents, but we might call them team members. But the person on top is the leader. They're the CEO. They're in charge. They're running the ship.
Yeah.
Different than a partnership where you have two people who have, almost equal say in the decision making. So that's why take a road trip is my best advice.
Oh, that's great. And do these two women have the same qualities or different qualities?
They're very, very similar. They work very, very hard. First of all, they're very similar in personality type in that they work hard. They're very consistent. They have a set schedule. But they're also in the same, I'd say the same season of their lives. They both have young kids. They both still have spouses that are working full time. So I think being in the same season as the person you're working with is probably some value to that. And they also have, they're very shared in the work responsibility. They work side by side in almost everything they do, and they're very, very good at sharing responsibilities, and that's probably why they're so successful.
Right. Actually, one of the questions I was going to ask you or Jim was with creating the team and how you talked about how you have to be transparent and very honest. Well, my experience is you can't really do that with a team or a bunch of people unless you have a certain level of relationship with them already. And so I was just wondering if you encourage relationship building time, or like the road trip for the team, or is there something that do they have to come together emotionally before they're actually able to take criticism from each other?
I absolutely think they do. I think at my company, as a company kind of policy, we do something called social nights. And our social nights, which we try to do once a month or once every other month, is we bring everybody together, but not just the brokers, but also their families. And I think having family time with the spouse, the kids, the whole group together is the way you build those relationships. And that, I think, is speaking right to what you're saying. And I think successful teams are kind of what you would describe as a family. I mean, they are by default a family, probably spending more time with them than you are your own family. And so having those outside relationships is super important. And it's a support, because if you don't have, if the spouses outside the team can support each other, with all kinds of different things, it's very valuable.
Okay, wow, this is a fascinating area. I actually wondered whether there is someone designated to be kind of the school counselor for the team. Do you do anything like that?
Well, I don't. I think that's the team leader's job, and this is part of what James was speaking about. You have to have somebody that is going to take on that role as CEO, and a lot of times, they're not necessarily thinking that when they take on the team leader role. So I think they have to kind of get emotionally their emotional IQ up, which is another great book, Daniel Goleman, which is all about EQ and emotional intelligence. Great book. And in raising your EQ. And if you don't have good EQ, you're probably not going to be a great team leader. You have to have really strong empathy for where people are and not treat them like employees, but treat them like family.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you, Jim. Great. And if any of you have questions, please put them out here. I am certainly had a lot of questions there. All right, just a little break here. Yeah, thank you, Jim. And we're going to let you know what's coming up and what products are around to purchase. Go ahead, Mel.
Yeah, just to double check, that was Daniel Colburn's book. Yeah. Okay.
Emotional intelligence.
Great. Yeah. We'll send out a link for that. I got it handy, but I got to talk and stretch across the way to show you Joe's picture. Joe Sesso, who you may know from Secret's Top Selling Agents webinars, is giving us a whole hour of unlocking the power of homes.com. So bring your challenges to Joe, because he's got a solution for just about any problem you may be having. Sign up at secretswebinars.com. And well, what happened to Chris? He's moving so fast around the country that he started to move off the slide there. That says, well, it's a Secret to Top Selling Agents on the road. And Chris is in Boston May 26th, and there will be other dates coming up in the summer. So even if you're not in the Boston area, go ahead and keep that link handy that Carmen has chatted out one more time, and keep that code handy. Get in free. There will be other dates coming up. So Boston, May 26th, tell your friends. And tell your friends Katie Lance is coming back to Secrets. Getting social. So if you got social challenges of the business type, bring them to Katie Lance.
She's excellent.
She is. Well, look at that beautiful book cover. James Colburn, our guest, has a book. It's already out. Create an extraordinary future while you sleep using the 5-minute epic evening ritual.
Wow.
Re-succeed. And we can ask James about that after the break, but let's ask them both about Teamify, the book they're putting together. In fact, we're getting kind of a sneak peek today. How far is it along, guys, and when can we expect it?
James, I'm going to let you speak to that.
Yeah, well, we're just about halfway through right now. Jim is focused on a lot of the resources to putting together teams. Obviously, just the steps that it would take, just clear systems for teams to consider. I work a lot on the mindset of team development. Obviously, Jim had touched on this earlier, just the concept that you really are moving from me to we when you become a team, and just all that means. You know, for the person who really doesn't want to focus on the well-being of others, team probably isn't the right pick. So this is someone that it would almost feel like cutting one of their arms off to not contribute to the lives of others. And so working through all that means in our life, not just for our business, but in our life, the growth of ourselves as a part of becoming a team.
And I think one of you was saying that you would like, if there's anyone out there who has a team, you would possibly like people to write in with examples that are maybe put into the book. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'd love to interview you. For anybody that is running a team or part of a team that would like to be a contributor to the book, through a question and answer session with us, we'd love to have them reach out to us.
All right, so let us know in
case studies and proof of
Great.
concept.
They can chat now, yeah?
Yeah, chat us now. Also, if you would like to be put on a list to be notified when Teamify comes out, just write it in the chat section and let us know, and we will pass your name on to Jim and James.
And that will also be on the survey, so
yeah.
Can you get the survey at the end? So make sure you say to Teamify the book, because you can do the same thing for this book. So if you'd like to get on a list to be one of the first to get Secrets of Top Selling Agents,
so many books.
Chat Secrets book. So let's watch the chat. Yes, so say Teamify book or Secrets book. Just chat that, and we'll put you on a list, and we'll let you know when it's out. In the next month or two or three, and Joe Sesso will be here next month to tell us all about it. Luminaries like Barbara Corcoran, Gary Keller, Dave Liniger, Lee Brown, Tom Ferry, and a bunch more. It's the book, Secrets of Top Selling Agents. Okay. And now we're back to Jim to get the rest of the book on Teamify.
All right. So let's assume you've decided, hey, I'm going to build a team. This is my passion, my vision. This is where I want my life to go. Who are the players? So I'm going to give you a quick outline of who the players could be on your team. This isn't going to start from day one, of course. It's going to be a build-out. But obviously, first one is you. You have to be the leader. One thing I'd encourage you to do is to create a job description for yourself. Don't think that you're above it, because you're not. And one way to look at this is ask yourself, if I was going to hire somebody and I was going to pay them $500,000 a year, what most team leaders would want to make, I'm assuming, or more, what would you require of them? Would you require that they be at the office at 8 a.m.? Would you require that they have a listing presentation? How about a buyer presentation? Would you require that they have a successful portfolio, use CRM, incubate leads, follow up with leads? What would you require of somebody you're paying that kind of money to? And if you are going to hold your team to a high standard, first person you got to hold to a high standard is yourself. You got to raise the bar and act as if you want to build a team and you're not there, act as if you're already there. Start saying to yourself, if I was going to pay myself $500,000 a year, what do I have to do? How do I have to look? What do I have to dress like? What do I do every day? And hold yourself to that high standard. Next thing is your team administrator. Going back to your assistant, hopefully is going to grow into this administrator position. And as they are going to be really your XO in a military sense. They're going to be your second in command. And they're going to be directing everyone around them. The way I look at a team administrator is just like a medical office. When you have a medical office, you usually have a front office manager. They manage every aspect except the patients, right, which is the doctor's job. So a great administrator is just like that. They're running the whole ship and kind of making sure that the doctor is doing what they should be doing. When I look at like a surgeon, a team leader is the surgeon. And when they're making the highest and best use of time is their hands are in surgery, right? So we want to make sure that that administrator is putting you in position to be operating at your highest and best use. Then you get to buyer's agents and showing agents, and I'm going to break this down. We'll talk a little bit about compensation for these in a minute. But one of the evolutions for a lot of team leaders is the evolution of giving up control. James touched on it, where we think our clients only want to deal with us and only us only. So some people are really resistant to having a buyer's agent. So they start, and I encourage this, with maybe a showing agent. And a showing agent's different in the sense that a showing agent acts like this. If I'm a team leader, a buyer comes in, I qualify them, I get them on the phone, I qualify them. I say to them, hey, listen, I'm going to hand you over to a showing agent, and they work with me hand in hand. They're going to go out and show you homes. When you find the home you want, I'm going to come by, I'm going to go over there, look at it with you, and then we'll write an offer and we'll strategize. That sound okay? Most people are okay with that as long as you're touching back and coming back in the process. So that's kind of a way to baby step into a buyer's agent. We'll talk more about that. Transaction coordination, that's something that's going to be running your transactions. I look at that as kind of like an escrow officer to some degree, in that they're handling all the details. A lot of times a team administrator will start with that role, because as you grow your team, people are going to be doing multiple jobs. But eventually when the team gets big enough and you're successful enough, you may want to add a transaction coordinator who does nothing but manage transactions. Same thing with listing coordination. Some teams will have a listing coordinator that's all they do is manage the listings that are coming in. And so the idea behind that is the team leader goes out, takes the listing, and the listing coordinator comes right behind them, coordinates signs and showings, and coordinates virtual tours and all the things that have to happen to make that listing successful. A listing coordinator could also move up, by the way, to becoming a full-blown listing agent for large teams where the team leader is too busy to take every listing. They can move up to being a listing agent themselves. And then if you get really big and you're really starting to go for it, you could decide you want an inside sales agent. So an inside sales agent's job is to do nothing but get on the phone every morning and incubate leads, maybe leads that are coming through the online platforms and the online lead generation platforms. But also they could be tasked with calling for sell by owners, expired listings. They could be tasked with farming. A lot of times they're licensed in today's world. It depends on your state and what they allow you to do. But they're just a lead generator. They're a lead generating machine. And then there's a lot of other things you could add to it. Some of the largest teams in the country also have technologists. They have marketing departments. They have social media coordinators. They have event coordinators. So lots of things that could happen there. But here's one thing to think about. I always think that a lot of people miss this boat is, what do you name the team? So this is a big consideration, because if you name, let's say for instance I named my team Jim Remley. The Jim Remley team. It sounds great. I love that. I love the concept. It's very egocentric of me to say it's the Jim Remley team. But the problem with that is that if my end goal 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line is I want to retire and exit this business and be on a beach in Hawaii with a margarita in my hand, it's going to be very difficult for Joe Smith to come in and buy Jim Remley, Jim Remley's team, because that's all branded to me. It'd be a much better idea to brand the team to something generic, something that I could sell to somebody else and they could take it over, right? So just something to think about when you're starting your team is, how am I going to brand it? Because it won't matter as much today when you're running it, but will matter when you go to try to sell that thing later on.
Right.
Another huge question, this is a big one, and it comes to me, I would say almost every week with the teams that work for me is, what do I pay a buyer's agent? So my first answer is, I'm just like a lawyer. Every time you walk into a lawyer's office, you say, well, what about this? I say, well, it depends. I don't know. They never really give you an answer, right? So I'm going to start with my lawyer answer. Well, it depends. And what does it depend on? Well, it depends on a few things. One, are they a showing agent or are they a buyer's agent? So if they're a showing agent, what that means, as I said, is that they're going out and showing homes, but they're not actually writing the offer. They're not managing the transaction. They're just acting as kind of something that's going to alleviate you of all those hours and hours in the car. So a showing agent obviously gets paid less than a full-blown buyer's agent. A buyer's agent is you hand them a cold lead, and they take that lead, or maybe a qualified lead, but they take that lead from start to finish all the way to closing. So they take it across the finish line. So when we look at that, here's my model of thinking about it, which you'd be surprised at how many team leaders don't look at it this way, but they need to. So if I'm an agent in my office and I'm just overrun with leads, but I don't have a team yet, my first inclination may be I'm going to refer this lead out because I just don't have time for it. I'm going to find a good agent in the office. I'm going to hand them the lead. And I'm going to ask them to pay me a referral fee, right? So what is that referral fee going to be? 25% is probably pretty typical, maybe 30%, if I've done a little bit of work. So 25 to 30%. So that means by default that I don't want to be in a situation where I'm paying my buyer's agent more than I could have got if I would have just referred the lead out. So that naturally means that and besides the fact that if I have somebody on my team, it costs me money. It might be costing me desk space in the office. I probably am paying for MLS dues, realtor dues, all kinds of fees that can get attached to having an agent in your office, in your team office. So I'm going to tell you that in talking to teams across the country, the averages run all the way from paying a buyer's agent 35% all the way up to 60%. It just depends on what the team's paying for and the whole structure of the team. And it depends on if they're showing agent. A showing agent would probably be less than that. They'd probably be more like 15 to 25% depending on exactly what they're doing and how involved they are. It also depends on if they're cold leads or warm leads. The cold lead would be somebody emails you on an internet listing, and that's a very cold lead. The closing that lead are very small. So some team leaders pay more to an agent because it's such a lot of work to get that cold lead done, and less for a warm lead. A warm lead would be the team leader has somebody in their sphere of influence that's contacted them and said, hey, I want to buy another house. Team leader doesn't have time and hands that off. That's a very warm lead, highly likely to close, less time to incubate. So they pay less on that. The other thing that can go into this is, did the buyer's agent develop the lead themselves? Was it developed by the buyer's agent? In that case, a lot of times teams pay a little bit more for that. If they've gone out and somebody in their own sphere of influence reaches out, sometimes they'll pay a little bit more. And again, it depends on expenses and who does what. One thing that I'm encouraging teams to think about is an operational cost expense. What do I mean by an operational cost expense? That just means that there's a cost to running a team organization. And it could be $10,000 a month, it could be 15, it could be 20, it could be a lot more than that. So that operational cost is something that's real, and it's a present cost. Some team leaders are making the choice of, hey, I got to make sure that I'm covering my operational costs, and the only way to cover that is through transactions that close. And they attach an operational cost each transaction. That might mean $500 a transaction. That might mean $700 a transaction. It might mean $300. Whatever the cost is, they attach it. So first, we got to pay the expenses that it costs to run the team. Then we can split up the profit. What happens if you don't do that is you're giving your split to your team members, but then you are burdened with all the cost of the team, which is really not fair to the team leader. So you might give that some thought, some operational costs. Whoops.
And Jim, the team leader would be transparent about all the actual expenses?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that's a real benefit to using the operational cost expense, what I call the OCE approach. And if you went to your whole team and said, listen, this year, let's say 2016, our operational cost for running this team was $292,000, and here's every expense that went into that. So based on that, we're going to have a transactional fee to pay for that of $392 a transaction, or whatever it happens to be. But hey guys, I'm totally open for getting that number down, and here's the only way we can get it down: get the expenses down. So help me. Let's find out what marketing's not working. You tell me. What can we cut out of this? How can we skinny up staffing or whatever it happens to be? If we can get that down, you all make more money, I make more money. So I think that having transparency is beautiful. Yeah. So a quick test: do I need a buyer's agent? So my quick test is always try an in-house referral agent first. So that's somebody you haven't employed. But just see, as I mentioned before, see how many leads you can hand to somebody else in your office and see how comfortable you are with it. Because remember, every lead you give to somebody else is a lead you're not closing yourself. And so if you're not busy enough to hand out leads, you probably don't need a buyer's agent. So first things first. And then here's the really, 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 really important thing, which you can start to build as a part of the process of growing a team and beginning a team, and that's to create a tracking system and incubation requirements. And so what I mean by that is, if I have a cold lead, let's say the Zillow lead comes to my desk, I'm like, I'm too busy, I can't deal with this. I'm going to send it to my in-house referral agent who I really trust and I think is going to do a great job. I'm going to say to that agent, listen, if you're going to be my inside referral agent, here's what you're going to be required to do in order to get leads from me. You're going to be required to tell me how you made contact, the ways you've made contact, and your entire follow-up process. And you have a form for it, you have a sheet for it you've created, and I want you to send that to me every Monday morning on every lead I've created for you. So you can just have a master sheet and show me everything you've done with every lead, but you got to deliver that to me. And if you don't, I'm not going to send you leads anymore. And this starts the process off right for you, so that you know that they're doing the job. But also, when you finally do bring a buyer's agent in to your team, you'll have figured out your system for that, because the incubation is so important, and you got to make sure that you're staying on top of that, because that's a massive cost for every team's lead generation. So compensation for team members will vary. Salespeople that are on the team, like a buyer's agent who I mentioned, or a listing agent, or a listing coordinator, my feeling on this is that probably the best method is a percentage of the sales they touched. So most, and this is the way most teams are operating today, is that I'm not going to give you a percentage of everything because you're not touching everything. I'm going to give you a percentage of the things that you're involved with. If you're a buyer's agent, the buyers you're working with. If you're a listing agent, the listings you're working with. Admin people, like your administrator, your transaction coordinator, those kinds of folks that are not involved actively in the sales process are getting hourly or salary. And then on top of that, incentives. And incentives are super important. And I'm going to just stop for a second here, because what happens in a team environment, and I've seen it so many times, is that everybody on the team certainly understands that hundreds of thousands of dollars are flowing to the team leader. What they forget is all the expenses that the team leader has and the cost of operation. All they see is there's another check, there's another check, there's another check. And they, it's a natural human tendency to think, I should be getting more of a pie to that. I should be getting more of a piece of that. Not understanding the dynamics and how hard it is to run the team. So here's what my recommendation is to all team leaders, is take those checks out of your office. In other words, when your office is going to provide you a check, don't have it go to your admin for processing. You should take that away from your administrator's job duties, is running your checking account. And a lot of team leaders start with that. They have them running their checking account or their business checking account. Hire a bookkeeper, hire an outside bookkeeper, take the money out of their equation so they don't even see it. Super important in my opinion, because you want them not to get connected with that too much. But that doesn't mean you don't have team goals and incentives. Incentives are super important. Everybody should be rewarded for success. So how do you do that? Some teams do that based on monthly goals, which I think are great, or weekly goals, which I also think are great. If we hit 10 listings, if we hit 10 sales, everybody gets a bonus. If we hit 20 listings, whatever the numbers are. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is a overall percentage of profit paid quarterly. Some people pay 5%, some people pay 3% over overall profit quarterly in a check. And then, aside from the financial things, you can look at it from a non-financial as well. Now, you mentioned doing some team building events, which I think are great. But non-financial is you understanding the people that work for you and understanding what can help them the most. And so if you have great relationships with people, you get great results. And so one example, one of my team leaders here employs a gal that has an autistic son. And so I know that he was instrumental in helping with some of the medical expenses that came up and things that had come up with her life and her situation. And I guarantee you that is far more important than any financial incentive. It's more meaningful in her life, right? So be thinking about the non-financials that make a difference. One of my top agents yesterday did something which was brilliant. I told him that I had just come back from Hawaii and that my fiance and I were going to go back to Hawaii for a honeymoon. So the next morning, he brings in and just delivers it, puts it on my desk, a book that he had picked up in Maui, and he just put it on there. I want this to be your first wedding gift. Now, of course, that cost them some money, but it's that kind of deep thought in relationship that will make a difference. So those are the things to think about. Super important.
So just to summarize, Jim, the team leader has to sort out the whole wage and salary before they do a team, because it's not the team that decides that kind of, makes that kind of decision.
Yeah, and the way I look at it is you want to be competitive in your market, but you don't want to overpay. Here's one of the problems that happens with a lot of team leaders, and a big issue is they'll say, Jim, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pay the person I'm bringing in a percentage of my overall business. I'm going to give you an example of that. Let's say they're doing $400,000 a year GCI, gross commission income. And so they're going to bring in an admin person, and they want to pay them $40,000 a year, but they don't want to have to actually write a check. They just want it to be come out of commissions. So they say, well, I'll just do 10% of everything I make. I'm going to give to the admin person, which makes sense, and it feels good, and hey, it's great. But the problem is, as the team leader grows their business, and let's say they go from $400,000 to $1 million in GCI over the next 2 to 3 years, now that person's getting paid $100,000 a year for a job in the market that probably would pay $40,000 or $50,000 a year. So you've got to be very careful in how you structure your wages, and you also have to leave room to grow. This is one of the biggest things I tell people, is if you're going to pay a buyer's agent and you've determined in your market the competitive wage or the competitive percentage for them is 40%, let's just say. You don't want to say, well, I'm going to give them 50% because I like them. You want to say, maybe I'll start them at the 40 and give them room to grow to that 50 later, because everybody wants an increase at some point. So give those percentages, give those wages room to grow. Same with on the staffing side. I would look at what is medical staff in your area getting paid. If it's a staff person at as I said, the admin, and you look at them as a front office staff, what would a medical front office staff person get? And then look at their wage range. If in your area it's $18 to $25 an hour, I don't want to start somebody at $24 an hour. I want to give them room to grow. Super important.
Okay.
So communication, we've touched on this a little bit, but team goals are essential. The one thing I would say is the biggest problem that a lot of teams have is they don't have team meetings. So team meetings are essential for everybody being on the same page, because here's what happens with a team leader. Team leader in their own brain has this whole list of running priorities, and it's just like this huge monster to-do list they're keeping on the forefront of their brain, right, their consciousness. But what happens is everybody in that team doesn't know and can't read his mind or her mind, and so they start working on what they perceive to be the priorities, and they get and there's this friction that happens, and kind of an anger, resentment buildup, because the team leader feels like they're always having to remind everybody what the priority is. You can alleviate a tremendous amount of that by having a weekly team meeting and outlining as a team leader, here's my goals for the week, here's what I expect from you, and the expectations are clear. The other thing the team leader should be doing is, and this is something you could do on the way to work, you could do it virtually, you don't have to do it in a physical room, but remember that administrator is your XO, your second in command. You don't have to have a team meeting every day, but with your XO, your second in command, you certainly need to have a communication for 5 minutes or 10 minutes every morning and say, what's on the agenda today, right? And so you just outline the day every single day. You'd be surprised at how often that doesn't happen. Some people are using, obviously they're using text, but when I say text, people think, well, what do you mean by text? What I mean is if a team leader is given somebody a task in the team, there's sometimes a level of control, and I will say in general, team leaders are very controlling. They want to know everything's done. So and what happens is they're always wondering in the back of the mind, did it actually get done? And so it creates anxiety, it creates stress. The best thing to do to alleviate that stress is every team person says a little text, done. Eventually, what will happen is trust will build up, and when the trust builds up, they won't have to need that anymore. Then they'll just assume it gets done, right?
Great.
Voxer is a great platform for communication. It's an app on your phone. You can go and check it out. It's a great way for teams to communicate in real time, and they can leave messages for each other. It's just very fast and rapid. So it's one way to look at it.
Okay,
we talked about instant feedback loops, and I just want to touch on a 360-degree review. One thing that you should do as a team leader when you're hiring somebody, and And often team leaders are not great employers because they haven't been trained to be great employers.
Right.
But they can overcome that with training, is to, when they're hiring somebody for the first time, is to say, listen, every 6 months I'm going to do a review with you. It's going to be a 360-degree review. What I mean by that is I'm going to give you a review based on my perception, but everybody on the team is also going to do a review of you, okay? And also I'm going to ask the principal broker in the office to also do a review of you. And we put it all together, and we're just going to look at it together. It's not to beat you up, just to help you get better. And based on that review, we may adjust your compensation. And so everybody knows, you know, don't come asking for a raise 3 months from now. You know when the raise is going to come. If it's going to come, it's going to be every 6 months when we do a 360-degree review. It forces everybody to work with each other at a higher level in that team, because they know that, that person's going to be reviewing me.
That's good.
So it changes the dynamic, right?
Yeah, that's great.
So what's the team worth? There's two ways that the team value will be established, in my opinion. One is your systems, as I mentioned before. If I'm going to sell my team to you, if you're just going to step into my team and it's a complete mess, and the only way that we make money is my sheer force of will, that's not something you can purchase and really depend on. What you're buying when you're buying a team is an income stream, and the only way that income stream is consistent is with systems, and your systems are going to be built based on your book of knowledge. So the book of knowledge is every single person on your team should have a 3-ring binder about every single thing they do, and to create that book of knowledge so that everybody has a system they're working through, right? So I use the core example, which is you want to codify one area of your business each week. So if that buyer's agent is incubating leads, how do they do that? What's their process? One page it, put it on one page, a synopsis, review it every time you're doing that task, and then ask yourself, can I improve it? Is there a way to examine that and improve it? And then the second way a team is valued is based on the database. Your database is the absolute gold mine of your office. It's your oil well. And if you're not managing that properly, your team will have less value. So you got to make sure you're managing it, whether it's with Top Producer or some other CRM strategy. You got to definitely make sure you're working in contact with Homes.com. There you go, Homes.com. So you make sure you have something to do that with. And then James has got a great quote here. James, I'm going to let you say it.
Well, build your own dreams, or someone else will hire you to build theirs. So the whole future of real estate really is the idea that, you know, I mean, and really the past of real estate is that either you're building your own dreams or you're building someone else's. I always jokingly say, if you need a raise, sell another house. The team thing, for some, if it's right for you, puts the whole building your dreams on steroids. So love this quote. Seemed really appropriate.
So I think as James said, the teams are right for some people, and I think it's for some reason millennials are gravitating a little bit more to teams than others. But it's not for everyone, but certainly it can be a great opportunity for a lot of people.
Okay, great. Wow. So, James, you have teams where you work in Seattle?
Yeah, we have 80 offices that I work with over a 4-state area, and you know, you see teams popping up in each geography. It's kind of a rampant growth, if you will. And you know, one thing that Jim was touching on was the lead thing, and that without leads, the engine is not really in place for a growing, thriving team. Right. Interestingly enough, though, in interviewing one of the teams up in the Seattle area, I asked, what is the single most important part of your team growth? And he said, the team lead said, perfecting the art of working with those we don't know, which interestingly enough is an art, especially for a team lead, if you will, that's been in the business for a long time and almost prides him or herself on working with those that are referred to or in direct sphere of influence. And yet the growth of real estate these days is about leads, and certainly leads to work with those we don't know. And if we're resistant to work with those we don't know, then it's going to be really, really hard to vet those leads and incubate those leads, and certainly help others within our team do the same.
I'm not sure, James, maybe this is a question for you, but what is the difference relative to personal qualities? It might be good to go over that between a rainmaker and a team member, and we have personality systems and so on. Could you talk to that?
Jim, I think Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I always encourage people is you got to be careful of hiring a reflection of yourself rather than a compliment. Normally, a team leader is going to be an A personality, a driver personality. When we look at the DISC model, they're going to be definitely the high D normally. Go, 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 go. And a natural tendency when we're hiring people is to look for people that are just like us because we think we're so cool. But the problem is, and I just had this happen actually not too long ago, a team leader hired another alpha to join him on a team. And I said, are you sure about that? I told both of them, I said, you're both alphas. I don't know if this one's going to work. Oh, yeah, it'll work. Of course, it didn't work. And it's natural. It's just not a good match. So what you want to find somebody is a compliment to you. It's going to fill in the gap. So if I'm a D, I want somebody that's more relational, that's more, or I want somebody maybe that's more admin focused, that's more of an engineering type of background, or enjoys spreadsheets and all those kinds of things. That's not going to be your driver personality. So I always say, hire the compliment, don't hire the reflection. Just like a marriage.
That's very good. I love, this is very, well, you're talking about a marriage kind of situation when you're talking about teams. And I wonder if I'm wondering if the millennials are into it because hopefully they're a little more evolved than the rest of us. Emotionally, maybe they've had more emotional intelligent training in this world as it develops. I don't know. Is that what you're feeling about that?
Very interesting. Millennials get a bad rap. We always say they're lazy. They're taking too long to develop, but maybe they're taking their time and they're getting it right. We got it all wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe for all of us that went to work at 15 and haven't stopped since, maybe we're the wrong path. I don't know. So time will tell. Time will tell.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you so much, James and Jim. This was awesome. People are feeding back in the question section that they've really been loving this. And I look forward to your book coming out, and I'm sure it's going to be a huge success, obviously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And talk about it.
Yeah, yes, definitely, James. I will take you back up on that for sure. Well, that's the end of the session with Jim and James, and now we're going to introduce Tim Rabara, who works for Homes.com, and he's going to give a 6-minute look at Homes.com featured agent and with the website feature for teams. So he's going to show you how to get leads, which if you're a team leader, you should stay on and listen to. And also if you're a team leader, he's going to talk about how Homes.com has adapted to helping brokers divvy up information and leads to teams. Tim, are you there?
Yes. Hey, Deborah. Thanks for having me here. What a great webinar here about teams and starting teams and getting teams developed for real estate. Homes.com, we've been around for over 20 years, and, what we're looking at here in regards to featured agents and how we can help teams, Deborah, is really get them in front of buyers and sellers. We come up 1 through 5 guaranteed in any major search, whether it's Google, Yahoo, MSN, or Bing. So if someone's out there and they're wondering, well, how they can get maximum exposure, well, they can definitely take advantage of the Homes.com featured agent. With the featured agent, we feature all of the listings. We showcase them there at the top of the search engines. The good thing about this is that we can also use this on a team platform where we distribute the leads to each of the team members. So as a team lead, I can take the lead. I can distribute it to my team members. They can follow up with it, whether it's through email, text, or a phone call. But they will be the first one seen on Homes.com there. So all their listings as a team will be showcased, and they're 1 click away from Google. What's good is that we also put this on mobile, tablet, and desktop devices. So if someone's done a search, whether it's their smartphone or their desktop, they could also get featured there as well. You can see a featured broker. We have something for brokers, so if brokers want to jump on this, they can definitely do that. And then, of course, with this showing in our app, they'll have an opportunity to connect with the buyer and seller immediately. As everybody knows, it's all about timing and a rapid response. When we go into some of the options that we have here for the teams, something I would definitely recommend is getting our preferred status. This is where you'll be able to engage with the consumer that's coming into Homes.com, and you'll be listed as a preferred agent or preferred team when someone's doing a search there. So there's a lot of great solutions that we offer team leaders and teams, and Featured Agent is definitely one of the solutions that's there where you can dominate your market. You can target by city to maximize traffic, display all of your listings. You can even block out your competition with guaranteed first page placement by buying a whole entire area out. And in just a few moments, I'll explain to you what we're doing in terms of a special that we're doing for an investment towards a featured agent. So again, this is driving traffic to your personal site if you have a team site, and you can also showcase your listings and ramp up your marketing strategy through Homes.com. If you're working with buyers, there's a stat out there. It says 67% of buyers work with the first real estate professional that they interview. And we have something that we can also set them up as, not only just as a featured agent, but also working with buyers through our zip code Local Connect. This zip code program matches them up with buyers that are coming into Homes.com. And again, as a team lead, if I want to distribute these leads to my team, we have a platform that's set up for that. So when you call in today, we can definitely go over how we can set you up so you can distribute leads to your team. With over 14 million visitors to Homes.com, 62% of the Homes.com buyers are planning to move within the next 6 months, and 90% of page views are people searching for their next home. So when you call in and you give us a zip code, ask for the availability, and also let them know that you want to develop a team account. So that way we can set up the lead routing. We can set you up with your team logos, your team information, your profiles, or maybe you're a single agent or a single broker, and you also want to call in and find out how you can get in front of more buyers and sellers. This is a great opportunity as well. So I want to thank everybody for listening in to Homes.com, and here's my information here. If you want to call in, our phone number should have been listed there, but our phone number. I think it's the next line. Okay. Yeah. Our phone number is 888-329-7576. I would love to answer your call if you have any questions. Again, it's 888-329-7576. You can call in about the buyer and seller leads, and then you can also talk about how you can get your team set up through our lead routing platform there.
All right, great. If anyone has any questions for Tim, we can answer them. Mel, have you seen any questions for Tim?
No. Just checking. Somebody said Homes.com site was down, but it's working in California. So
okay.
If it's down in your area, go ahead and hit refresh.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Mel. Tim, thank you so much. And if anyone is interested in looking at this team feature or getting more leads, call 888-329-7576. So next month, May 17th, we have Joe Cesso. Mel, do we have that slide? Can we bring that up? Who will be presenting Unlocking the Power of Homes.com. And the way he's going to do this is he's going to draw on, the music's a little loud, I think. He's going to draw on the information that's been given by many of our past speakers about the things you need in your business. And so Gary Keller might say, this is what you need, and then Joe is going to say, you know what, Homes.com can help you with that. Katie Lance might say, this is what you need for success, and then Joe will say, well, we have an option here that will help achieve the goals that Katie just spoke about. So don't miss this webinar. Go to secretswebinars.com and sign up for that. And then we have the month after is Katie Lance. She is a dynamo in her area. She just published a book called Get Social Smart. That is, do we have that slide up, Mel? June 28th. And sign up for that. That's not it, but anyway, I'm sure it'll come up. Oh, we don't have it. Oh, well, that's all right. Katie Lance, go to secretswebinars.com, and you'll be able to register there. Wow, what a webinar. Thank you again, Jim and James. That was really very interesting, and a lot of people have appreciated your knowledge, and I'm sure they'll be buying your book. So to our listening audience, thank you for participating. Be sure to participate in our exit survey. I read every response that you write, and I change the program based on your feedback. So I really depend on your help for that. So thank you for filling out the exit survey. And again, thanks Jim and James, as well as our Homes.com, Tim Rabara, and our webinar team. Goodbye, and well, thank you, Mel.
You're welcome. And remember, survey is your last chance to say, I want this book that you see on screen, as well as James' book. ReSucceed. So.
Oh, great. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Recording that testimonial.
Really, the more you have to be organized.
Not to put all your eggs into one basket.
Keep those people remembering you. Give them what they're looking for.
But properly priced is the key.
I say, how can I do this different?
You know, we don't have a technology problem. We have a people problem. You have to build a relationship.
Secrets of top-selling agents.
So we'll stay on for a bit here. If you are interested in the books, just chat us. Also, when you check out and fill the survey, there's a checkbox to say you're interested in this book or James Colburn's ReSucceed. So again, just chat us. Say, James' book, ReSucceed, both books, or Secrets of Top Selling Agents book. And we'll put you on the list to get the first info when it's out. Actually, ReSucceed is available now. It's the Teamify book that's yet to come out from both Jim and James. So if you say both books, we'll put you on the list.